Tēnā koutou katoa, nau mai haere mai. Welcome to Mental Health Awareness Week. Now, we're about to have a kōrero with the lovely Tim Merhtens, but before we do that, before we proceed any further, we're going to begin with karakia. So just bear with me for a moment. Lovely to have you online today, and let's do this. Kia ora. I noi tātou. Hauora mai runga, hauora mai raro, hauora mai roto, hauora mai waho. Hauora te pūtaki o tēnei kaupapa kia pūrangi aho mātau i te wānanga me te kōrero. Tēnei te titi ake e te pauhaura ki te pūtaki o tēnei wānanga. Tūturu o whiti whakamaua kia tīna, tīna, haumie, huie, taiki e. Tuia te rangi, tuia te whenua, tuia te pauheringa tangata o te motu. Kei tāku kingi, kingi tu heitia pōtatou te whero, te tuawhetu, pai mārire, kia ko otira ki a tātou. E mihi ana ki a tātou kua whakakotahi mai ki te tautoko o te karanga o te rā, o te kaupapa, woo talk, we'll call it today. Tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa, ko tuihana ohi a hau. Lovely to have you with us today. Lovely to see those that are online. But I just really, I hail from a beautiful place called Tauranga Moana, Nai te rangi nui, te Arawa, on my father's side, and on my mother's side, European. Grew up in Melbourne, Australia. You're probably going to hear a bit of a twing or a twang every now and then, but this is not about us today. This is about us celebrating Mental Health Awareness Week, and this week, every day, we're hosting a close friend, I would say, to have a kōrero around some of the challenges and the mahi that they do within this space. And first and foremost, he's a very close friend. I'm trying not to get teary as I go to introduce him, but our very close friend, colleague, co-founder of Rangai, the Wellbeing Collective, and so much more to me and my whānau is the wonderful Mr. Tim Merhtens. Nau mai haere mai, Tim.
Thank you very much, and kia ora koutou. Ko Tim Merhtens takunga no o te tahi ahau, ko Ngāti Pākehā ahau. It's really a pleasure to be here, of course, Tuhana. You know, I love chatting to you anytime, so...
And we were just saying that, we were both trying to, quickly eat before we came into our hui today. And both of us, if you don't know, we're slim-sized people who have big appetites, and we really like our kai. And Nick Allen has joined us from Melbourne, so nau mai haere mai, Nick. Lovely to have you online today. Tim, we're probably going to, I'm not sure how our paths crossed, really. Can you recall?
I do actually. It was, you were working at Vodafone. It was at the old building. And I came in with Phil, my boss,
right.
to meet with, I can't remember the guy, but from Spring Day. And we had a little conversation there. But the next time we met was probably the more memorable one, when I came in with ripped pants, because I got out of my boss's car to come in and meet with you, and split them all the way down from top to bottom. And I think I was wearing pink underwear that day, so it looked exceptionally nice walking into your offices.
Now, tell us, we've known each other, that'd be a few years now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be three and a half.
3.5. Wow, time does go quickly. Now, of course, you've been in Auckland and Tāmaki Makaurau there in lockdown for, it would be a number of weeks, and now you're in level 3, which is really not that much better than level 4, except that you can buy takeaway is kind of how I view it. How have you coped within your home with this kind of latest challenge around COVID?
I think this time around pretty good. It felt more familiar to me this time, I think, would be where I'd start. Like it was almost, it was a response that we've got used to. This is what, our 4th time in Auckland now, so it didn't really hit me so hard. The other thing is that I have recently bought my own house, so I've had lots of renovations to do, which has meant that actually probably my life before COVID, before this latest lockdown, and my life during this latest lockdown hasn't actually been that dissimilar, because most of my weekends were based doing the the renovations anyway. Where I have struggled is that I'm a very, very social person. I love to be with people. I love to be around people. I love to hold people and kiss people. And it makes me sound like a slut, but I just like to have that real human connection, that real tactile connection with people. And so it's been a struggle not to be able to see my friends and to check in on them the way that I would like to.
Yeah, yeah. So let's hoping that next week we get an announcement that allows you to kind of see friends and family. And I know what that's like because my family are all in Melbourne. Been an incredible long lockdown there. I've got an aunt in Boston in America, and of course, America's been pretty ravaged by COVID. And I just feel really blessed to be out of Auckland, out of Tāmaki Makaurau, I suppose, and have only encountered 2 lockdowns, so feeling
Well,
really
and
blessed. Yeah.
lucky too, you made it when you made it to Melbourne when you
Oh,
did, because had you
absolutely.
missed that opportunity, you might have been going a bit stir crazy yourself.
I know, and I really do miss my family. So just for all of those that are beaming in from Melbourne or have family overseas, we just want to send you our warmest regards. Now, probably thank you for sharing how you've been feeling through COVID, because I think it's been really important. But I know that, you yourself, if you're just being transparent and honest, have some challenges around mental health and wellbeing. And I thought that we would have a conversation around that today. And perhaps, you could, and also you've got a really interesting background. I mean, your family dynamics, the way you were brought up.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we start with, what kind of family upbringing did you have, Tim,
Yeah, of course, of course. So I was brought up a very strict Jehovah's Witness family, one of 7 children, number 6 of 7. It was, whilst I had a really great upbringing, I had very loving parents and they were very kind and the like. The challenge I had was that I didn't necessarily agree with their religious beliefs. And it became more obvious that I was going to have struggles when I realized that I was gay as well. So, because that's 100% not accepted within that faith. So I was basically kicked out of the church and kicked out of my family. So it was a pretty challenging time. I made the decision at that point to move abroad because it was easier to start a life afresh with no one around than to try and start a life afresh with all the friends and people that I had once known that were sort of no longer really happy to share my company. So I moved to the lovely city of Melbourne and settled down there for a couple of years before moving on to London.
Wow. How did you find, how did you find that moving to a whole new kind of city and place and space for you?
I loved it, but I don't think I think I had to make that decision anyway, because I don't think I could have gone through a journey of sort of self-discovery and understanding who I was and what I wanted in an environment where potentially I had that sort of big brother sort of family religion overlooking and overseeing. Sorry, clear my throat. It would have been really difficult for me to actually have managed that. But the actual setting myself up in a new country and making new friends, I mean, it was right in my wheelhouse. I was social. I was happy to get out there. I was loving life, So that was really fantastic for me.
And your relationship with your family today, how does that what does that look like for Tim Merhtens?
The religious side of the family is a little bit of a struggle from
Yeah.
time to time, because I guess I was only really welcomed back into the family, or felt like I was welcomed back, when mum's dementia started getting really quite bad. So they needed the extra help and assistance. So it was definitely challenge. It's definitely a strained relationship, I would say, but we do our best to do what we can to reforge those relationships and strengthen them where we can. So I guess mum's dementia actually has been a slight blessing in some respects.
Yeah, yeah. Now I know that tell us what your challenge is actually. You verbalize, I don't want to make any assumptions, but what is your challenge with regards to mental health and well-being? How do you define it? How do you,
Yeah, well, so I have post-traumatic stress following a pretty tragic incident back in 2012, and I would say that that was that's been the pinnacle, I guess, of my mental health concerns. It brought a whole host of really significant challenges that came with it. Post-traumatic stress meant that I had depression and anxiety and panic attacks. I developed a severe agoraphobia, so I got scared of actually going outside and seeing anyone. I actually got scared to even leave my bedroom if there was someone else in the house, and I was in a flatting arrangement, so not ideal. It meant toilet trips were quite difficult. I developed such severe nightmares that I would wake up screaming at night. To be honest, I still do occasionally, but it's not as bad anymore. And I would have such panic and terror that I couldn't go back to sleep. And I developed a phobia of actually sleeping, which resulted in more poor choices that I was making at the time. I then also had flashbacks. So flashbacks are really challenging because I guess it comes down to the way that trauma memories are processed. Trauma memories often aren't time-stamped in your brain. Your brain doesn't recognize it as a past event. It recognizes it as happening right now. So each time you remember it, each time you're triggered into one of those flashbacks, you relive the event with the same fear. It feels like you're reliving it. It's like a nightmare come to life.
Wow.
And so I was in panic. I was in that sort of flight response the entire time. And I had just these elevated sense of fear and stress and all those sorts of things that came with it. And so when you put that whole picture together and you have all those sort of things happening all at once, then you start to realize the impact that it's having across everything else. Everything else is so hard. You're so overwhelmed by everything. The smallest little addition of an additional stress is too much. How do you cope with that when you're already dealing with all the rest of that?
So how did you, like, I'm in my head, I'm like, wow, where do you start? How do you begin to, is it like coming out of a blackness and into the light? How do you journey your way or navigate your way through that, Tim? What were some of the things, that you found? Because I can't even begin to imagine what that would feel like, if I'm being completely honest. So how have you managed to, like, navigate your way? It's been almost 10 years, but yeah. How
Look,
did
it's
it
not
all
been
kind of all begin? Yeah.
it's not been an easy journey by any means. After 2012 happened, I went into a pretty dark place, and it became progressively worse. And the reason for that was I didn't have good skills that I developed from a young age of talking to people around me in a trusting sort of manner because of that religious upbringing I had, because I had realized from a young age that I wouldn't be able to have those conversations. So what it ended up resulting in is I got worse and worse and worse, until one day I was actually at my doctor's, and this was after I tried to suicide a number of times. I'd been hospitalized twice at this point. But I was in at my doctor's, and I was like, I need help, and I need it now. And they just took one look at me, and they could see I was in just an awful state. I could hardly hold myself together. I was sobbing. I looked ravaged because I just wasn't sleeping. I hadn't slept properly for ages. I was managing maybe 1 to 3 hours sleep a night. Sometimes all I was getting. And so the doctor was amazing. They actually, she cancelled her appointments for however long, walked with me to the, just around the corner to the hospital, where there was a clinical psychologist. She sat me down, waited until one of the clinical psychologists were actually able to see me. And then she waited until after my appointment to make sure I got home safely as well. It was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely
that was
incredible. The level of care. Oh, sorry.
yeah. And I was gonna say that was the beginning of what was this, do you call it a time of healing, or, how do you refer to this time in your life that's,
Yeah, I would say it was the beginning of my recovery, because that first step of asking for help is really bloody hard. It is not easy to be vulnerable in front of people. It's not easy to feel weak. And it's not easy sometimes to open up to people about stuff that you're not coping with and feeling embarrassed about or ashamed about. I know that I struggled with a real sense of self-loathing, self-hatred, and shame associated with the event. Because whilst it was totally out of my control, just to sort of give context, it is as a result of sexual assault, but I felt so responsible somehow because I'd gone out drinking that night. I went to the bar. I'd made those initial steps, and so in the whole process, I blamed myself. So
Wow.
it was a really, really difficult thing to come back from. But that first step of actually asking for help was one of the key steps that I made. And I wish to heck that I'd asked earlier, that I'd actually made those steps earlier, because I spent so many years struggling where, had I maybe asked earlier, and it is a maybe, but had I'm fairly certain that I would have actually started that road to recovery earlier.
So how many years from the time that you were assaulted to the time that you actually asked for that first, oh God, I need help? Because
It was
only because you'd mentioned that you'd tried to suicide twice. I'm wondering when was someone's kind of heightened awareness around what you were potentially going through was, yeah.
It was nearly 3 years before I
Wow.
actually reached out for help. I mean, the signs were all there. I'd had to call in sick from work for like 9 months. I didn't work at all. I was fortunate to get full pay during that period. I was withdrawing from people and seeing people less and less, making excuses for why I couldn't see people. As a naturally social person, as a natural extrovert, those were some pretty big signs, but I did my best to hide it as well, because I was scared to have those conversations, because having those conversations meant that I had to front up to something that petrified me. It meant I had to talk about something that was causing me so much anguish and grief. I didn't know how to start those conversations.
So from the time you first kind of said, yep, I need help, and the doctor was there, what did that then lead into? And by the way, family, for those that are listening, we probably should have said at the very beginning that potentially there may be some things that are difficult to hear. So if you do have any, if something is triggered for you, then please remove yourself from this conversation. That's fine. And I should have said that at the beginning.
Or
But, Tim,
alternatively, can I just
yeah,
say, also feel free to reach out to me to talk. I'm so
yeah.
happy to talk if you've been through anything, you're going through anything, if you need any, to talk to someone who understands what it is you're going through. So please, if you do need to extract yourself, feel free to. But if you need to talk, I am here.
Awesome. Thank you.
So you were saying?
And we'll put Tim's details up. But from that time that you first asked for that help, when that doctor, was with you, what did the next, few years look like for you as you kind
Baby
of
steps.
yeah.
It was total baby steps. I mean, to an onlooker, I was moving at a glacial speed. To me, it was huge steps, but they were
Yes.
tiny things.
Yes.
So, I mean, I often talk about, the road to recovery being like a baby. Like a baby is born and they are reliant on everyone else around them. And then bit by bit by bit, they go through various developmental stages where they might learn to, they might be able to focus on their fingers, and then they can clap, and then they can sort of roll over, and then they can sit up unaided. And bit by bit, they start crawling, and then they stand up, but they fall flat on their butt a million times. But they get back up and they keep on moving. And it's the speed with which those developmental stages happen. It increases. So, they're very slow to begin with, but they get faster. And so the same for me is the small things that I would be able to do. For example, when I could finally leave my room to go to the toilet, like I literally had bottles in my room because I was too scared to go, it was too much effort to actually talk or see anyone.
Wow.
And then when I would, so it was small steps. And then one day I might put on clothes finally to leave the house with the intention of leaving the house, but I only made it as far as my bedroom door. And then the next day I might have made it as far as my front door, but I still didn't make it outside of the house. And it was just these tiny, tiny little steps that to me were massive wins, because it was so much better than I could do the day before. And it was more than I'd been able to muster for quite some time. And I think it's really important for an observer who hasn't maybe been through something to recognize that it will appear to move at a glacial speed when someone's in recovery to start off with, but that speed will speed up. Imagine global warming. That glacier will move faster.
Yeah. And so, I think, it's really easy for us as outside observers to kind of voice an opinion or to have an opinion, to make some judgments. And, who did you surround yourself with in order to help you navigate your way through this journey? Because, yeah.
I wish I'd been better at this. This was something I really struggled with. I'd got so used to internalizing things growing up. And in many respects, we're socialized as men to internalize stuff. So there is that additional issue. But I did thankfully have, my sister was amazing, but she was back in New Zealand and I was living in London at the time. But she was incredible. And she really sort of guided and supported me a lot, both mentally, but also financially, when I went into a pretty bad place financially as well, because I did end up with a $100,000 hospital bill as a result of that. So that took me quite some time to pay off. But I also, so I managed, my partner at the time was fantastic, but to be honest, it took me a while before I started to actually open up and talk to people. I would say it was not until I went into therapy that I started down that journey, and partly because my therapist, she was encouraging me to extend my network, to not just rely on one or two people, because what happens if they're not available? That's a huge responsibility to ask, to put on someone to be available all the time. But then when I was suicidal, what happens when they're not available? I'm putting myself at huge risk. So it's definitely something that I wish I had been better at. And it's part of the reason that I think this theme for Mental Health Awareness Week is so important. Because if we can start having conversations now when we're feeling good, assuming we're feeling good, but if we can start to have conversations, develop really good habits about talking about the tough stuff when we're coping well, we're developing a habit of learning how to talk when times are tough. And it will make that transition so much easier, because you've already used to talking about the tough stuff. You've already developed a network of people that you can talk to when times are tough, so that if one topic doesn't quite sort of fit with this person, you're like, I don't feel 100% comfortable talking to that person about it. You've got another person over here that potentially you can talk to about that tough topic. And you've opened up this network of people so that you've got a group of people to rely on. You can do a small bit of the conversation over here, a small bit of the conversation over here, a small bit of the conversation over here, or you can do all of it to everyone. But it gives you options, and it gives you a safety net.
Wow.
Without that safety net, you'd struggle.
Yeah. And what I'm just so feeling so in awe, actually, of knowing the person that I've known for the last 3.5 years. It's kind of one of those things where I thought, wow, I would never have known any of that about you, because you just come across as such a bubbly, friendly, very understanding, kind of that guy you can ring up if you're not feeling so good. He's always going to pick you up and make you feel amazing. What are the how long in therapy? How long in therapy, and
I reckon
and is that
would be about 2 years.
do you still need to have times when you
I do a lot
say,
of self-therapy, but I also
Okay.
do occasionally see a therapist as well. I think one of the things that I've really learned in this process is that when you notice that you're going on a downward spiral, because the reality is I still have triggers and I still have things that will send me into that spiral. The earlier I notice it, And the earlier I then implement strategies, or alternatively see someone, talk to someone professional. And there's advantages to whether it be a professional or a friend, either way. But the earlier I do it, the more likely I am to pull myself out of it before I get into a real funk. So I like, it's one of the things I definitely encourage, if you feel you need someone to talk to and you don't feel comfortable talking to your friends, to seek professional help. I mean, a lot of businesses will have EAP services, and you can comfortably get some free services through your business in that instance. But whether you're talking to I do. I still will talk to a professional from time to time, but it's not. I don't feel I need it as much. I'm very aware of my strategies these days, and I know, my triggers, and I know to avoid them, or alternatively how I can work on them in my own time as well.
So how do you identify that? And then what are some of the things that you put in place? So what are some of the strategies for you?
I mean, it depends on the situation, but I mean, the most simple thing for me to do is to sort of think about having a toolkit of strategies. Because one thing that works one day won't necessarily work another day. So sometimes I will, for example, go running, and that'll put me into a really good mood. Snowboarding, makes me very, very happy. I get so excited when I go snowboarding. It totally resets everything for me. Other times it's about what I eat. Other times it's about who I'm talking to. Other times it's about getting out of nature. Like, there's all these elements, but I know which bits make me feel good. And so I have like a toolkit of things. And so my best strategy is to make sure I'm doing them regularly, daily, making sure I'm doing things that make me feel good, talking to people who make me feel good on a daily basis. The more I do it, the less likely I am to fall into that funk. If I do start falling into that, then start to implement things that I know can make me feel good. And some days things won't work. Like, going for a run won't work every day, because it'll be too much of a struggle to get out there sometimes. But yeah, those are the sorts of things that I'd implement. But I do think a lot of them are quite personal. You do need to find things that make you feel good, that make you feel happy. And so a little bit of self-analysis is, I guess, necessary in that sort of situation.
And when you say, so do you have daily practices? Do you have a daily practice that you do, like, depending on how you're feeling?
Yeah, I basically make sure I dedicate a period of time every single day, a minimum of half an hour, where I'm doing things that make me feel good. So whether that's going to the gym, or doing some exercise, or cooking food for friends, whatever it is, but I dedicate time and make sure I do it.
And in this kind of all this mahi that you're doing, all this work, is there a sense too of forgiveness? Like a forgiveness,
It took a long time to get there. I definitely, like, I went from self-loathing and self-hatred to where I'm probably in a place where I like myself now. I don't know if I've reached a place where I could say I truly love myself. I'm still working on it. It is always going to be a work in progression. But yeah, I don't blame myself anymore. I don't find I don't. I think what I've discovered instead is that I've got to a point where these events that hurt me so badly have now got me to a point where I can now look back on them and see what they've given me as a positive.
Yes.
So you mentioned, for example, that you see me as this positive, gregarious person who's empathetic. And in actual many respects, this situation has made me so incredibly empathetic to other people. I sense when people are struggling, I want to help them. It's part of the reason I got into the mahi that I do, is because I actually want to help other people. I want to help them recognize that they can thrive again. Like, there's statistics around post-traumatic growth that suggest that between 50 to 90% of people will experience growth from trauma and actually do what I just mentioned, which is where you learn lessons and you can turn this really awful event into something that you actually value or have grown from enough that you get those things. I think the difficulty that I have with those statistics is that still means that 10 to 50% of people don't, depending on whichever study you're looking at. And so there's still significant areas for us, particularly those of us, I guess, working in the wellbeing space, to provide support and kindness and empathy to people and to workplaces.
Yeah. And what's some of the what do you think you've learnt the most from, over the last, what would it be now, 9 years? What's the thing that
Yeah,
what's the greatest gift you've received from?
I think the most transformative lesson
Yes,
was
yes.
that I can actually choose to focus on what I can change and influence. I was
Nice.
spending a lot of time focusing on the negatives, on the events that occurred that I had no influence over, and really dwelling in those, in that really negative space. But what I learned to do was to focus on not who I was, but who I wanted to become. To focus on not what had happened, and the things that I can't change and influence, but the things that I can change and influence, the things that I can do to make myself better, to be a better person, to really propel my well-being into a really positive place.
Nice. And like now you're the director of wellbeing. Director of wellbeing at, and I know the name's changed, so I don't want to get
And
it
my
wrong.
my everyday well-being.
Your everyday wellbeing. And
Yeah.
how do with all this experience and all these challenges that you've had, how does that help you in the mahi that you do, currently?
So much. Like, it's where my passion comes from. Like, I know what it's like to really be down and out, to have hit rock bottom, to be in that dark abyss. I know what it's like. And so my passion is to help other people learn how to manage their physical and mental health in a way that keeps them thriving, or alternatively brings them back to a place where they can thrive. And it guides everything I do, because now, when I'm thinking about how we deliver health tips or challenges or presentations even, it's always sort of focused on the practical steps of what people can do, lessons that they can learn, how they can really bolster their own well-being to make sure they stay thriving and flourishing where possible.
Wow. And I think I'm in awe of the fact that every day you have a challenge. Most of us wake up and things might feel a bit shitty every now and then, but we know that we're pretty much we're okay. We don't, we're not dealing with 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 nightmares and things like that. And so I just really take my hat off to you and all that you've endured and all that you've navigated through to be the person that you are today. So I just really applaud you, Tim, for just the amazing contributions that I know you make to so many.
Thank you, Hannah. Look, I'm by no means an exception. There are so many people who go through things. They may not be as comfortable talking about it yet, but they've been through things and through challenges and and what it does is you see it probably in the Manaaki support that you set up, where probably most of those people had been through things and they realized that they had an additional empathy, an additional something that they could bring and give to other people. And so I think what's really important in this process, and one of the things I've really learned more recently, is that as someone who's been through what I've been through, the importance of talking about it and actually sharing what's occurred with people and the lessons that I've learned has an influence not just on the people that you're talking to, but also hopefully on society, by reducing stigma and breaking down the negativity that's often associated with poor mental health.
Yeah.
Because it is difficult if you've not been through anything mentally, where you've not really been pushed or challenged to the point that you suffer something like chronic depression or anxiety or bipolar or whatever it is that you might have. Then it's very difficult to have true empathy for someone in that situation. But it's also very difficult to navigate those conversations when someone does mention they have it. like what it is, how do you proceed with that sort of conversation? So I do think that I have aside from the fact that it is my passion, I do feel that it's an actual responsibility to try and help reduce the stigma and make people feel better, and to make them feel comfortable to open up and start that conversation. Because like I said, for me, that asking for help, or that starting Kōrero was the start of my recovery. And I know that for other people that it might be too.
Yes, and I think that there's a lot of kōrero about us removing the stigmas and having open conversations and talking. But I still feel like we've still got a little way to go. I suppose we're a lot. I mean, look at us. We're celebrating Mental Health Awareness Week. We're having a conversation about this. We probably wouldn't have done that a couple of years ago, but here we are today because we're in a space that's comfortable enough, where people have an open enough view to kind of go, okay, I want to listen to this conversation, or I too have experienced things. And so, yeah, I think I do have a question though. What inspires you, Tim?
What inspires me is the people I see every day struggling and still coming out smiling, still showing kindness to people, still wanting to help others. They inspire me to be better. But I also do get slightly concerned when I see people who I know to be struggling, giving so much to other people and forgetting to give to themselves.
Yes.
Which all too often happens. But they inspire me, because imagine putting up with all those mental challenges and hurdles and overcoming them to still get out there and be lovely and kind and smile and generous and gentle and all these wonderful attributes that they're struggling themselves. It's amazing.
And I know you've found love again, and you're in love with a beautiful guy. And he must be a great support for you too.
Yeah, he's pretty magical. I feel very lucky because, like, for example, I think it was only 2 or 3 nights ago, I had another nightmare where I was starting I was waking up with screaming, but just having him there as support, I calmed down quite quickly. And I was able to go back to sleep, whereas sometimes, like, I actually have to wake myself up, go have a cup of tea, and then I've got a few things that I'll do to sort of help keep myself calm. I'll actually one thing that I do.
I was going to say, tell us.
But this actually came out of therapy. It was about taking control of the dreams, because the dreams obviously happen in your subconscious, and it's very difficult to control them. So what I do is I get out of my room and I turn the light on, and I get out my notepad, and I actually write down what I remember of the dream, for starters. So it's like quite confronting, because you're confronting what it is that you remember at that point. But then at the end, changing the ending. So actually writing out a new and happy ending. So, but doing it in a way that I'm surrounded in that ending with people that I trust and people that support me, and in a situation that I feel safe, in a place that I feel safe. And it's really weird, but it actually works. I think I rolled my eyes probably during therapy when I was told to do it, because I was like, oh my God, what is this actually going to do? But it's remarkable, but it helped me process it. It helped me move past it a little bit. Yeah, it was very cool.
And tell us, what else? What other tips and what other little things that, because to be honest with you, I like having a little notebook if I just think of things sometimes. I just want to write them down. But I love that. So you're changing the ending of your dreams. What's a few other things that you can share with people that you think that they could, potentially utilize?
Yeah, like, I guess it depends on the situation, but I think one of the other things I would say is when you're looking, so mood is a little bit like the weather. You're going to have sunny days, you're going to have rainy days.
Yes.
So it's a really good tool to sort of think about, am I actually struggling, or is this normal? If you have a couple of rainy days and a couple of sunny days, that's quite normal. That's not really when I would be concerned. So when you have a persistent emotional storm set in and you do head into a really dark place, which does happen to people, one of the things that I recommend doing is, rather than looking at yesterday as being your indicator as to whether or not you're doing well, or if you're getting better, look back 3 months, look back 6 months, look back 12 months. If you can see that your trajectory overall is positive and that you're pulling yourself to a happier, better place, then that's a massive win. If you see that you're heading towards more of a negative trajectory, then it's definitely a time that you want to sort of seek out help. But the reason I don't recommend looking back to yesterday is because, if you're having at the moment, say, 9 days of emotional turbulence and then 2 or 3 days of sunny days, then you might be looking from a sunny day to an emotionally turbulent day. And you could, you could be looking from so you could be looking back at a day that was much, much worse than you are now, and not feel that you're making progress. And that's very demoralizing, to feel like you're not achieving the change that you're looking for, to finding the happiness that you're looking for, to finding the to sort of feeling like you're making those improvements. So I just find looking over a greater length of time to be a more accurate indicator than looking just at yesterday.
Oh, thank you for that. I like that. I like that, and also I love the idea of changing your dreams. Changing those nightmares into something. Where you actually are in charge of the narrative. Yeah.
I think that's what it is. It's taking the power back, putting yourself back in the steering wheel.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing, because you feel so out of control through a lot of this. You don't feel like you're in the driver's seat. So it does give you the power back a little bit.
I love that. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we kind of close things off?
How much time do I have?
No, you just go for it.
No, I think the other thing to really remember is that, a bit like when I was talking about the baby analogy, it's a really good idea to sort of focus on the basics. When you're struggling, when you're sort of first pulling yourself out, get the basics right. If you can get your nutrition right, your exercise right, your gut health right, those sorts of basic sort of things that we do daily when we're feeling well, but often forget to do when we're struggling, then the likely outcome will be a reduced load on your brain and on your mental health, which will result in feeling more positive, feeling better, feeling happier. It was one of the things that when I was first working on it, like, yes, I had the help of a psychologist, and I was very lucky for that one to have them for so long. But actually, the things that were in my control, the things I felt I was capable of managing, were those things. Like, I moved from eating fried chicken and chips for 3.5 years to actually starting to just eat some decent vegetables and fruit. And the difference that made to my physical health, which meant that there was less stress on my mental health. There's a whole heap of other things. Obviously, if you're getting good, decent nutrients in your gut, it's strongly linked to your mood and all those sorts of things. But it's taking control of the things that you can, and therefore, when your body's feeling healthy and well, it's much easier for up here. So much easier up here, because there's just a lot less cognitive load.
Yeah, and I think, I know that there's lots of conversations and lots of kōrero around mental health and well-being, but it's actually a bigger picture. It's like you've got to have all those, like, if you think about te whare tapawhā, for instance, it's having all those things working, or to some level anyway, because they're all interconnected. Everything's interconnected, and I think it's understanding that as well. And also
Yes.
the importance of sleep. I mean, people really underestimate the value of a good moi, of a good sleep.
Agreed. I mean, when I was, getting 1 to 3 hours sleep a night for nearly 3 years, you can imagine how hard, like when you've just had sort of mild sleep deprivation, you're feeling cranky and you don't concentrate as well, and you might snap at people a little bit, right? But Years of sleep deprivation leads to just so much worse. There's a whole heap of health associated risks, from reduced life expectancy to cancers to all sorts of things from massive sleep deprivation. One little thing to consider on the sleep side of stuff is try and maintain a predictable sleeping rhythm. If you go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time every day, your body actually, because your body craves that predictable rhythm, you'll actually improve the quality of your sleep. Your body will start being able to go into deeper, better sleeps. So admittedly, the nightmares didn't help with that, of course, but
yeah. Well, I have to say that when we first went into lockdown, the most recent one, I've pretty much slept 8 hours a night. It's the first time I would have done it in a very long time. And the difference that it makes to clarity of mind, clarity of thought, just how you feel about things, your energy levels, it's really amazing.
Is that just because you're... Oh, sorry.
Sorry, yeah, that's just because...
Is that just because you haven't been having to travel the same way, or like has that been a
I
concerted
think
effort?
so.
I
think so. Just, I'm actually going to have to stay home. I'm actually going to have to, just be grounded for quite a long time. So I think that, and my mind does not feel as racy as what it has in previous times. So
well, that's a great thing to have come out of lockdown.
I know. It certainly is. Except that I think that, like most people, the sleeping patterns change. So we're going to bed later, but and then therefore we're sleeping in later. And the impact on like getting children to school is probably not such a great thing. But anyway, I want to thank you so much for sharing all that you've shared. I feel like we could keep on talking. I know that there's a number, is it 1373 that people can, is that the number people can...
1737.
Sorry, 1737. So, and people can get access to counsellors at any time at no cost. So that's 1737. And if you can check out Mental Health Foundation has amazing resources, and also a whole list of people and support groups and things all across the country around mental health and wellbeing. Is there anything further you'd like to say, Tim, before we close off our kōrero?
Just to say thank you so much for inviting me to have this chat today. I'm sure you've learned one or two new things about me in the process, but it's for me, it's also cathartic. It's therapeutic to have the opportunities like this to actually chat and to talk about them, because it's part of the process. And I do think that's part of the reason that this theme this year is really exceptional, of taking time to kōrero, because it's something we all need to do more of. And like I said, if there's one takeaway from this, is learn to have those tough chats now. Learn how to do those now, because later on it's going to bide you really well if you do go through a turbulent period.
And I think that that even sometimes when you think you're all growing up and things are good, there are just things that then happen and you think, oh yes. And to be okay about saying, okay, I am having a difficult time at the moment, so I probably need to go and seek some counselling, or I need to have a conversation with someone. Give yourself the permission to kōrero. And I think we've become very afraid of what people think or what people say or how we're perceived. And sometimes we just got to say it like it is, right? You just got to just say it. I don't know if that's really great.
You're not wrong. It's definitely sometimes just saying it. It does help, but we've got a long way to go in New Zealand to sort of break down the macho stoic sort of mentality of not being vulnerable or willing to talk. So we're getting there. I'm sure it won't be too many more years before we sort of start to really chip into it.
Now, I know you offered for people if they wanted to reach out to have a kōrero with you. So if you want to, how would people reach you, Tim, if they wanted to get in touch?
The best bet is you can email me directly at, I'll give you my easy email. So tim@myeverydaywellbeing.com, no spaces. or you can get in touch with me at LinkedIn with the name that you see, hopefully, on the screen there, Tim Merhtens.
Yes, yes.
But yeah,
Thank
those are the
you.
best ways.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much for being vulnerable. And yeah, I did definitely learn. So I wrote down some pearlers of one-liners and things that you said. And just thank you for sharing. Really appreciate this kōrero with you and your time today. So ngā mihi nui e hoa, ngā mihi aroha, really, really appreciate it. So, and you're just such a joy to have in my life, and long may it continue. Tim Merhtens, long may it continue. And what I'll do is, we seem to have lost Tim, but I'm going to close this with karakia. So I noi tātou. Kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou ariki ahu kreiti, me te aroha, me te atua, me te whiwhinatahitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, 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 āmene. Ngā mihi everyone, have a great afternoon.